in answering the call for better supports for Indigenous post-secondary students, conducted a series of surveys and polls to hear from students what topics they most wanted to discuss when it came to their mental health. Indspire, in collaboration with the Mental Health Commission of Canada, have chosen the top 5 responses to address. We wanted our post-secondary students to hear from others who have walked their path, so we will be having a discussion with 2 students, both of whom are engaged in achieving their master's degrees. I am Kelly Brownbill, and I am privileged to be the moderator for this series. I am joined by Connor Lafortune and Ziigwen Mixemong.
Ane bojo, getchiwa bishwa makwa Indigenous cause und Kins Indigenous cause, oki kendan donjaba, beneshin dondem and ishna benin dao, and swakmakan donda. Women to goshimo, jaganashimo, mimo bangi anishnabimo, webama dizing no ke endao, minashka bewis endao. Hi, my name is Connor Lafortune. I'm from Dokis First Nation in northeastern Ontario on the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory of 1850. I graduated from Nipissing University with a double honor specialization in Indigenous Studies and Social Justice and Gender Equity, and I'm now pursuing my master's at Laurentian University in Indigenous Relations. I also work in life promotion, harm reduction, and Indigenous education.
Bojo, Ziigwen Mixemong Mongdo Dem, Jimnasing Donjiba, Bodowadami Olnu Anishinaabe Kwayandao, Upading Made Kwayandao. Hello, my name is Ziigwen Mixemong. I'm Loon Clan from Beausoleil First Nation, which is located in the beautiful Georgian Bay area of Ontario. I am also a member of the Three Fires Medewan Society. I first started pursuing higher education with an honors Bachelor of Arts in Indigenous Studies at Lakehead University, alongside a minor in Gender and Women's Studies, and I am now pursuing a master's at Lakehead University in Social Justice with a specialization in Gender and Women's Studies. My research is focused on Indigenous reproductive rights as well as the barriers that face Indigenous women pursuing motherhood.
There are so many steps to handling stress and anxiety that can come from school, especially in post-secondary education. Recognition of symptoms, understanding how those symptoms affect students, and being able to name and address those symptoms are just a few. Those things will be different for all students, and Indigenous students tend to face even more factors. Both Connor and Ziigwen have had their own personal experiences with stress and anxiety and are on their own journeys to heal and to prevent further trauma. Let's hear from them what they've faced and how they faced it to remain as healthy as possible. Ziigwen, why don't we start with you?
Absolutely. I think that it's pretty safe to say that regardless of whether it has been recognized by the greater maybe mental health community or medical community, that every Indigenous person who enters the academy is going to have some sort of mental health issue, whether that's something that they even recognize, whether it is them feeling a separation from their sense of self, whether it is an actual diagnosed anxiety disorder. You know, I think that the challenges that arise for Indigenous youth who are entering post-secondary, and even our mature students who are entering these spaces for the first time, are met with so many different challenges that are specific to people with our positionality, that there's going to be something that comes up. And, you know, sometimes people are lucky that it's just maybe something that they deem to be small, or it can be completely life-altering. For me personally, I was faced with a lot of really traumatic events at my first university, and I ended up actually taking a 2-year medical leave for my mental health that was really mandated by my doctor. I was continuing to push myself too far. And again, it wasn't just performing academically. That I felt like I had been doing since I entered the public school system. I was okay with the academics. It was everything on top of it. It was feeling responsible for every Indigenous person on campus, because I felt like I was, one of the ones who was able to be loud and proud, and some weren't. So I felt like I had to be a voice for people. I put myself in positions where I wasn't able to go home and be on the land and regenerate that sense of self. I put myself in positions where I was no longer necessarily in ceremony. Even if I was facilitating other people accessing ceremony, I was putting others before myself. And I think it's important for us to remember that we can't help other people unless we ourselves are full, in a meaningful way at least. And I really drained all of my resources. You know, I often say that if you're not listening, the universe is going to turn up the volume on you. And unfortunately, it took a couple of quite traumatic events for me to understand that I needed to take a break. And even then, I didn't want to. I felt like I was leaving my people behind who were still there, leaving my friends, and leaving those people who I felt responsible for because I was in a position of leadership in the community, in that space, whether it was Indigenous students or other students, because I had begun working in student life. And so I think that having to recognize that I myself am a being that needs to be whole in order to help others is still something that I grapple with. It's still something that I find myself putting others before myself, and especially because I know that I came from a place of privilege, knowing my culture, knowing my identity. Other people don't know that. I continue to have to reconcile with the thoughts that I should be doing all of these sorts of things for other people and not putting myself first. I think it's incredibly important for Indigenous students to realize that it is okay to experience things like anxiety and depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, that those are things that, you know, a multitude of us experience and have personal experiences with them. And if maybe one person doesn't have that experience, I'm sure that they know someone who has, and that it's okay to reach out. And if reaching out the first time doesn't work, try again, because there are people who will listen to you. I will listen to you. So eventually, somewhere down the line, if you keep asking, I'll come into the picture. But no, it's just that there's always someone who is going to listen to you. It just takes sometimes a little bit of time to find who those people are. And for me, going home, I felt like I was not only failing all those people in school, but I was failing my ancestors, because I really felt that I was put in the academy as a result of my ancestors fighting for so long for me to have a place there. But then I realized that by being unhappy and by being unwell, that was actually doing a disservice to my ancestors, more than me just operating in a community that wasn't built for me, in an academy that wasn't built for me. And so that was the point that I had to continue to remember. And for me, my path to being well is still a path that I'm on. It's still a journey that I'm on. And I think that an Indigenous point of view would be that we're always on the journey to wellness and working towards our health. For me, that meant pursuing both westernized and traditional methods of healing. And I think it's important for our communities to remember that that's okay, and that a lot of the elders in my community say sometimes you need to step into a Western hospital to get the help that you need, and that whatever you need to do to stay here is what is okay for you to do. It is what you need to do, and that, you know, tomorrow always needs you, and we always need you, and we are still here, and we are still going to continue to support you, even if you maybe can't see us. Because I know I'm speaking for myself, but I think I can speak for Connor as well, in that, you know, us as a community and people like me and Connor are going to continue to try and reach out to people when we are able to do so, to improve their wellness and see what we can do for them. Just because other people have done that for us. Other people have reached out and said, are you okay? Are you doing okay? Do you need to take a break? And I'm going to continue to do that for other people because I was given that opportunity and it was life-changing. And so I think that, you know, the academy and being in university or college, and I even found in high school, or even I think probably in elementary school, there were mental health challenges that arose just simply because of my identity. Whether people were being offensive or racist or whatever was going on, it was because of who I am. And that's really unfortunate, because whoever you are as an Indigenous person, you are beautiful, you are sacred, and you belong here. And so I think that it's important for us to remember that, and that I will listen to you. Even if the first person you reach out to maybe isn't that person, you can keep reaching out, and I'm here for you, and I will listen to you.
And we need you here.
Absolutely.
We need you here. And that concept of wellness as a journey, not a destination, is really important to understand. And you know, you mentioned some of those Western diagnoses that are attributed to the ill health of students. And, you know, for example, you mentioned PTSD, but for Indigenous students who are carrying the kind of trauma where they've been minimized or they have experienced racial attacks, for lack of a better word, those don't stop. So what was PTSD becomes complex PTSD, because the hits just keep on coming. So being able to state out loud, like you have, that this is what I'm experiencing is so important. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
And Connor, what are your thoughts?
I think it's interesting what you mentioned about being able to connect folks, but never being able to connect yourself to those resources, because that's something I experienced since really elementary school, of being like, oh, you're feeling like you might need some support. Here's who you can connect. And I was the person that would go to the counselor's office and I'd be like, here's your new student, like here they are. And myself going through immense mental health crises at the time and being like, but not for me. Like I'm not suffering enough to want this. And then someone could tell me something that is very, I don't want to say small, but very right now in the moment. And I'd be like, you want to see someone? Here you go. And I was very willing to offer it, but never able to take it for myself. And I didn't take it for myself until much later, until typically when it's almost too late, when you're really, really struggling. But it's something that I experienced also in university when I started working in life promotion. One of the things I found that was really important when I was developing this toolkit through the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation was that we talk about fidgeting, because I'm someone that's constantly in motion. Something like sitting down right now is extremely difficult for me, and I've been moving my toes the entire time. I find it very hard to stay still because I'm constantly in motion. My mind is constantly wandering everywhere, and people call that ADHD, and that's so typical in our Indigenous communities. And the way that I like to explain it, especially to folks who work with youth, is that our communities were built on the foundation of movement. If you were in a canoe and you stopped paddling, you died. If you were being chased by an animal and you stopped, you died. We're constantly in motion. Most of our peoples are nomadic people. We were constantly adapting to the new land, learning, we were moving. No one is built for a classroom, but Indigenous people specifically are not built to sit at a classroom and learn in that way. We are place-based people. We are tactical people. We like to learn in a very specific way. And so when we make people sit very still and quiet, that can be so hard, because your entire immune system gets dysregulated. Your nervous system, everything about you is in shutdown mode, because you're trying to contain yourself. When in Indigenous communities, in ceremony, we're all about expressing those feelings, about talking when you need to talk, and about moving, about doing things while you speak. There's so much beauty to the ways that I found to cope with like a lot of that stress of not moving, is that I bead during meetings, or I draw, or I sketch. And sometimes people see that as someone who's not paying attention. And then you read what I'm writing and you're like, oh, you're really paying attention. I'm like, yes. And if I wasn't, I wouldn't have any of this, because I'd be thinking about 1,000 other things going on in this room. And so those things are really important when we're talking about Indigenous students, specifically just bodies that want to move and want to grow, being told to hide in a box. And that can be very, very difficult. And it does affect you academically as well. And I have a hard time sometimes talking about the things that I do to support my mental wellness, because I never want to come across as that being the right answer. And so for me, the journey that I took for my mental, physical, spiritual, emotional health was to walk the red road with Mixemong, journey that I've been taking for 4.5 years. So that includes for me sobriety. However, I believe in harm reduction. And so if sobriety for you isn't possible, or isn't something that you want or that you need, then I'm not telling you that that's what it has to be for you. And that's also important when we talk about our own journeys, is to not make it seem like we are pushing our paths onto others and saying that that's the only way or the right way. And so that's something that I always like to forward, because I might be a sober person, but that doesn't mean that I have to tell people for them to live a long and good life. It's just what I have to do to live a long and good life. Like we've been talking about, is about those connection pieces of being out on the land, being able to talk about it also, finding people. Maybe you have 20 friends, but there's only that one person that you can say absolutely everything to, and that person is so important, to be able to share every thought. For me, as a person that struggles a lot with anxiety, with just overthinking, because there's 1,000 thoughts I could be thinking at once, being able to share it takes the stress away. So if I'm ruminating over a certain subject, even if it's something that I'm like, this bothers me about you, and I wouldn't say it in that way, but if I tell you, then I'm like, oh, it doesn't bother me anymore, because it's not stuck, it's not being contained. As soon as I get to let it out of this containment, this body that we live in, then it eases so much of that for me. And a lot of our teachings tell us of how like we're a spiritual journey that is contained within a body, and that can be so hard to do, because your spirit wants to move and grow and change and shift, and your body can't do all of those things. And so to be kind to the body that you have, because it is just trying its best with the capacities it has. So that's for me something that I try to consider when I'm feeling very, very stuck, is that this body is trying to hold me until my next journey, and that I have to love it for what it is in this moment.
Absolutely. I love that we both beat in class. That's amazing. I also beat in class. I've had to talk to my professors before class and tell them, by the way, when you look at me on camera and my arms are moving, I'm beating, but I am dialed in and paying attention. And I've had trouble with that. I don't know if you've had any profs who've been like, no, you're not paying attention. It happens. Have you ever had any professors who have really like broken the mold of a classroom for you and that's really helped? I had, for example, I had a professor, it was actually an Indigenous music course, and we would get up and dance when we were learning about music. And that was like one of the best courses and one of the most, it actually energized and like helped my mental health, because I don't know if you've ever had that.
Yeah, one that sticks out for me is that I'm, as a poet, I love expressing myself in a creative way, and sometimes assignments can be so rigid. And in my master's this year, we had some students that were in like strict sciences, like hard sciences, and they came to the Indigenous Studies program to like expand that. And one of our professors loved when we submitted poetry as assignments, or we'd start the class with a poem. And just that expanding your mind and being able to express all these very academic concepts through an emotional lens, or through like a lens that really touches people, has been so profound. And I was talking to them just yesterday, and they were like, I submitted something for med school as a poem. How beautiful is that? How wonderful is that my mind would never have changed in that way had I not been allowed to express myself fully. And the impact that has down the line, because that student might start doing it, and then maybe 5 years down the line, that professor will assign a poem in med school. You know, there are different things, the small changes that we can make, and you feel so much more seen when you can express yourself fully in that way.
And that's what it is. I start to feel seen, and it's not just that someone in a position of power has used their power to include me, but it's actually the space, sorry, was more created for me. And that is a game changer, I think, for mental health.
And that's certainly something we talk about as we talk about all of our society addressing cultural safety, is that, you know, they don't need to know what works for you or what works for you. They need to know that it's important to build that in, what works for you, and give space for that to happen. And it's so interesting for me to watch the two of you light up as you talk about addressing the things that sapped your mental health, about the things that fed your mental wellness. And I love to hear that, and I love to know that there are ways that the academy, which has really been pretty rigid, can, without too much effort, adapt to different ways and different concepts of mental health. You know, the school system often talks about you should do this or you should do that, certainly in some of the harder science areas. And yet we know that that's not an Indigenous way of being. Our core belief is in non-interference. You talked about that as your path of sobriety is not for everyone. And we are not supposed to tell someone else how to live. In fact, our concept of creator is that the creator doesn't even tell us what to do. The creator doesn't listen to our thoughts either. She gives us tobacco so that when we know when to tell her, listen now, please, because we mean you to hear, and doesn't listen in all the time and doesn't direct our paths. So to me, I'm hearing you say that reclaiming those ways that are not that different and not that unheard of in modern society, but claiming them as Indigenous students helps with that coping with the anxiety, coping with the stress. Any other tips for us as we wrap up about what students can do to, you know, look that stress and anxiety in the eye and say, it's okay, I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to be here. What can we talk about that?
I think that the most important thing for, I think, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous students to remember is that the colonial institution of universities, it's the very place where we're trying to, you know, improve our agency, to get a degree so that people will listen to us, that we can be qualified in Western terms. That very institution that you are forced to attend to further your own agency was the very institution that was built to assimilate and eradicate our people. It's not that I want people to walk through life with a deficit-based way of looking at things, but to understand the magnitude of the situation of Indigenous people within the academy is incredibly important. As far as, like, I guess, tips and tricks and advice for trying to keep your mental well-being, I guess, in check or up to par, or however you want to phrase it, for Indigenous students would be to look at yourself as a whole person and not just a student. Oftentimes, the institution really hammers down the academics, and if they don't, then it's the extracurriculars. It's how you're gonna contribute to the community, how you're gonna contribute to school, how you're gonna publish one day is something that me and Connor are facing right now. But that's not who you are. You are a whole person that is also doing this. And so looking at your mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being is gonna improve your mental health, looking at yourself as a whole person. I know that, for example, when I have something physically going on with me, even though that's not mental health related in the terms of Western medication or Western medicine, as an Indigenous person, as looking at yourself as a whole, it does affect my mental health. It's going to have an impact. And so looking at yourself as someone who is a whole person who can be affected by a multitude of different things, and just being aware and being able to check in with yourself and again, reach out and find someone that will listen to what you're saying, whether it's just spouting things because you need to get them out of your brain, or whether it's, look, I'm having a really hard time because of this situation. Understanding that, again, you are needed here. We all love you, and that find someone who will listen and will help you in whatever way is meaningful for you. I'd like to echo what Connor said, is that there's no right way to achieve mental health. The only right way is your way, and the best way that you can achieve it. So that would be my advice.
How, Connor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's about unpacking what ceremony means to you. And so often when we talk about ceremony more broadly, we think of sweats or round dance or shake tent. We think of these more grand ceremonies where we're in community. For me, the biggest impact that I've had is defining ceremony for myself and being able to create ceremonies that I am participating in, whether that's daily act of affirmation, taking a bath, taking a walk, having a smudge, smoking pipe. Those type of things are ceremony, because the intention of our ceremonies is what really makes them ceremony. And so if your intention of taking that bath is to relax, is to reconnect with yourself, is to take the time to think, those intention pieces are what makes it ceremony. Sometimes eating a meal can be ceremony, and laughing and just being able to exist in joy is a ceremony within itself. And so being able to redefine that has been something that has been so powerful for me to be able to add those to my daily bundle. And also having something like a bundle, and people think often that a bundle is only the physical space that you carry. So you have your drum, you have your pipe, you have your feather, but your bundle is mostly composed of everything that you know, everything that you will come to know, and everything that you can share. Those aspects of the bundle are what really motivate me to continue to prioritize myself, to continue to prioritize my mental health, and be able to manage the ways that my body exists and adapt to it and to learn from it, and to be able to bring that as a gift in my bundle that I can then share with others.
Miigwech, thank you so much to both of you.